It's a pleasure to have you here this evening, and I'm so glad that you got in touch with us for speaking for us. We are so excited because we also want to hear more about your book as well. So start anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to see everyone. And it's great. I see everyone who has their camera on, and I enjoyed the overview. I learned so much on how to use the call after I didn't know most of those things, and I'm a computer guy. So I thank you. But I thank you. I'm here to speak about the name of my book is called The Place Between Here and There, and it's available on Amazon. It's a beautiful story. It's a it's a near-death experience, but it's also about how the near-death experience can prepare one for some of the challenges that they may yet have to face. And so what I'm going to share today is core to this experience, is my near-death experience. But there are events prior to my near-death experience and events after my near-death experience that really, I think it's all part of the same experience, the same lesson, the same understanding. And I believe that they're all connected. But let me share my story, and you be the judge. And perhaps through questions and answers, you could perhaps share your insight. I find that in a lot of ways, I'm an imposter and I'm a pretender, in the sense that is that I don't know anything about near-death experiences or the paranormal, or, I've learned something over the last few years, but for the most part, I was an outlaw biker. I was a computer person, a very old personality. I didn't know anything about any of this. So if anyone starts questioning me about authors or other people's experiences, I know nothing about this. My whole experience is just my experience. And that's what I'm here to share. And so what happened was, most of my life I've been a biker. I bought my first motorcycle when I was a young child. I had a track next to my house and all these open fields. I bought mini bikes. It was just something that was all part of my life. I had paper routes. It was something I loved to do. If you put me on two wheels and an engine, I lose my sense of responsibility very quickly. I love it. I just really do. And so that was my life. I was into computers, and so I had my own business with my brother, and so that brought me somewhat of a license. I loved rock and roll and pretty girls and beer and pizza, and just living the life that somebody would who liked doing those things. And so that was basically it. And so one day, I guess it was quite some time ago. I guess it was 2005. I was driving my Harley Davidson down the Meadowbrook Parkway on Long Island, and it was late at night, 4th of July weekend, and I'm looking over to my left-hand side, and what do I see? I see a pickup truck driving right next to me, about 10 feet away, going the same direction as me. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. But when I looked over, I realized that, no, something's wrong here. Is that there's a divider between us, and this guy is going the wrong way on the Meadowbrook Parkway. He's going northbound in the southbound lane, and I'm going northbound in the northbound lane. And I'm realizing this guy is driving right next to me. It's very late at night. It was like 2 a.m. It was after 4th of July celebrations and all. And I wasn't sure what I was seeing was actually what I was seeing. And so I kind of like tried to reason it out. And just while I was just trying to figure out what was going on, the railing disappeared, and there was nothing between me and this gentleman but just a little piece of grass. And so what I did is I pulled over to the right on my motorcycle, and just then this guy went underneath the tunnel and went head on into a limousine. Killed a little girl, killed the limo driver. And it was a crazy, crazy experience. That it was in the newspaper, and because it not only was it a tragic accident, but the gentleman who was responsible for the accident, the allegation was he had been drinking, and that they were charging him with murder, not with vehicular manslaughter. I'm really not sure of the legal term, but they were charging him with second-degree murder. And I believe it was the first time in the country that was doing that, especially in Nassau County. It was a very, very big event, and I believe the family was on Oprah twice as a result of this. And it was a crazy experience. I testified on the trial. I was on the stand for 2 days. It was a crazy experience, but I had mixed feelings about it, because that first off is I was no angel, and but I don't know. I had to bear witness to what I saw, and so it was a pretty tough thing for me to do. And there's a lot of eyes on me, and so, but I bared as best witness as I could, and they convicted that young man, and they sentenced him to 16 years in prison. And I I wasn't happy about it. I thought I did the right thing, but to me, it was just a kid. It was just a kid who made a terrible mistake that he couldn't take back. It wasn't like he was a habitual criminal. He did a terrible, terrible thing. But oh, I dwelled on that for years. I mean, to this day, actually. But I also remember the parents. The parents were heartbroken, obviously, but they were angry. There's going to be nothing that the judge or the legal system could do that could ease their pain. They were they were heartbroken, and they expressed that very, very strongly. And I was taken a little bit back, but I understood, because they had just lost a child and they were gravely injured. And the whole experience just changed my life, because I thought about it every day, and I just couldn't go on with my life anymore the way it was. I left my business of 20 years with my brother. I wanted to, that was it. I wanted to be a full-time dad. Is that I saw what had happened to that family, and no matter what, I was going to be a full-time dad. Is that I wasn't going to miss out, not only missing out, but I was going to make sure my children had my influence on it. Because that's why I had kids, is that I wanted to share. And my life was just going past, because I was so involved in my computer world and my motorcycles that I don't know. But I completely changed my life around, and that was the focus of my life. It was my kids. I actually became a very involved local citizen. I was elected to the school board, and actually became a school board president. And I could go on and on about every political action thing, every dad thing I would do. It was something I was very committed to. But boy, I surely did like my Harley Davidsons, and so. One afternoon, on Sunday afternoons on Long Island, I would take my Harley Davidson, and I would travel out east to the Hamptons. That's like where you folks know. You're from Connecticut. You're nearby. So I would take my Harley Davidson out to the Hamptons, and there was this little hole in the wall barbecue place that I would go to. You would drive past it, and you would think, you wouldn't even know it would serve food, but you drive around back. It's where bikers went and locals went. You got some really good barbecue. So it would take me like an hour and a half to drive there. So it was like a spring day. So I went out there, and I had some barbecue, and then on the way out, I was stuck in traffic. It was strange, because it was spring. It shouldn't be traffic, but it was like, I think there was an accident or some sort of emergency road work, and everything was backed up for miles. And so I waited online for a long time, for like 40 minutes. And the bike was just so heavy. And if you ever drove a Harley Davidson, those engines, they just are really hot, especially when you're stuck in traffic. I'm just making a whole load of excuses for a really dumb decision I made next. But what I did is that people were driving on the side of the road to try to get up to this right-hand turn up ahead to get out of this traffic, and take another road to get out of it. And so eventually that's what I did. But just when I got to the intersection, someone had made a little bit of space for a truck to come through, one of these big SUVs. And it came through the intersection just as I was, and it T-boned me right on my Harley Davidson. And lights went out. I had no idea what had happened. And the next things I knew is that I was laying down on the ground, and I was facing up. And I saw like a lot of time must have gone by because it was starting to get dark. Like it had changed. Like everything around me had changed, and there was all these emergency vehicles around me, and I was like, I, I didn't know what was happening. Like everything all of a sudden was happening so quickly, and I realized right away that this was real, and that this is not something I'm gonna just be able to get up and say, "Hey guys, see you later." Okay, you know, this was serious. And so I wanted to get up, and the emergency worker was saying, no, stay down. And I was like, you know, when you drive dirt bikes, you know, it's an old saying, you know, whether it's, I know it's very ignorant, but if you go down and if you stay down, you're going to stay down. If you go down, you got to get up. So if you go down on your motorcycle, no matter what, you got to get up right away, no matter what, or else you're going to be hurt. I know it's stupid, but it's just the way that we think. And so I tried to get up, and wow, I felt my leg was disconnected. I felt like, oh, it was incredible. I mean, it was so shocking. I felt like the fragments of my bone sticking into my muscle, and wow, I just passed out, because next things I remember is that I was like flying through the air, and I was like going into the clouds, and you know, all of a sudden, like everything was different. Like everything looked different. I felt different. Like I didn't feel like I was in pain anymore, and I felt like kind of like relaxed. And it's almost like I was on like a ride, and I was going up through the clouds, and I started to go higher and higher, and then just then I started to go down out of the clouds, and I started to go lower and lower, and then I saw. And then I saw a big H on the ground with a circle around it. I was in a helicopter. I was outside a helicopter. It was like a small helicopter, and I was like in MASH. You ever see those things? They have the people on the out. I was actually outside the helicopter, and I was landing at Stony Brook Hospital. I knew exactly where we were. Just as dumb luck as Long Island is, and you folks in Connecticut, you may know this too, but Stony Brook Hospital is one of the premier medical centers. It's a university hospital. They did research, all the stuff on sonograms, and they're just a tremendous trauma center. And just as I'm graduated from there, I got my master's degree from there. My mother's a graduate from there. My daughter's a graduate from there. You know, it was such a big part of our community. And it's just dumb luck that I lived there. And I was in a helicopter. I mean, how did they land a helicopter? There just happened to be a school nearby. It was just a series of really dumb luck kind of stuff. But I began to learn that perhaps that dumb luck isn't dumb luck, that is perhaps it's grace. And that's something that I was beginning to understand, because as they rolled me out of the helicopter, I was aware at that point, and I looked around, and I realized just then that, wow, my life is this is never going to be the same again. Like this is we're playing for keeps here. And that's the last thing I remember, like being here for about a month. But in myself, in my spirit, it was eternity. It was a lifetime. It was many lifetimes, because I was gravely ill. I had several cracked vertebrae, and they had to put these two rods all up and down my spine to stabilize my spine, and my hip was all disconnected and cracked, and so they had to put all these rods and things in it to like keep it together. And I had a traumatic brain injury, and I had all these broken bones. I mean, it's like Evel Knievel, you know, read Evel Knievel stuff. That's what it was like for me, because it was a truck and it hit me on my left-hand side. But the most serious thing was the internal bleeding, because that they couldn't stabilize me, because that when I would come out of surgery, they would think it would be okay, but then my blood pressure would drop. They'd have to bring me back into surgery. They'd have to, you know, it was a process. But eventually they located the bleeding. They had to remove my spleen, do some other miracle work, and they stabilized me. And there I was in my hospital bed, to the rest of the world, that's where I was. But in myself, in my spirit, I was in another place, a place that I call the place between here and there. I don't think it's where you go when you pass. I think it's kind of like an in-between place. It's kind of like purgatory that I learned as a Catholic. I'm Catholic, and but it wasn't like a place of punishment. It's like a place of transition where I believe, I didn't know it at the time, and this is my recollections afterwards, but I think it's a place where you transition from physical into spirit. And it's not like a switch where all of a sudden the switch is, you're alive, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in spirit and everything's wonderful. It's that I think it's a process that you have to go through in order to return to spirit. And I think that's what I was going through, because I was gravely ill. Nobody, if it wasn't for this miracle of science, nobody would ever survive this. And then to survive it with the cognitive ability. I'm strange now, but I was stranger before the accident. So I certainly can't blame it on that. It's just like, it was just such a very, very intense realization. It's a series of realizations. And so at first is that I didn't know I was anywhere else. I didn't. At first is that I thought I was just at work. Like nothing was different, except for the people I was dealing with was like they were from my past. Like the first person I met was somebody from my past. He was a character. I mean, it was someone I knew in work for like a year, and then I was in work for 20 years. I barely knew this person, but I liked him. He was a very flamboyant guy. He was from Haiti. He always had some sort of scam going on. He really didn't speak English. He really didn't speak French. He really didn't speak this other language. So he kind of like mimed everything out. He was definitely a character, and I really enjoyed his company, although I made him pay cash for everything. and gosh, he was there. But I hadn't seen him in like 20 years. But I noticed he didn't age. And I was thinking to myself, wow, he must have some good genes or something, because he didn't age. And so I was just helping him with the computer thing. And then I saw him again, but then he aged like 50 years. But it took me a little while to recognize him, but I recognized him. And it was weird. At first, I thought it was his father, but because he mimed everything out, he would do a mannerism, and I would say to myself, "Oh, aren't you so-and-so?" And he would say, "Yes." And then I realized we were playing a game, that this guy was presenting himself to me in all different shapes and sizes and all different genders and nationalities and just all different situations. And I had to guess that it was him. And at first, I relied so much on a gesture or something to like tip me off to like who he was. But then after, and it worked. But then after a while, I didn't rely on that so much. I was starting to feel an energy. Like there was something common about every way he was presented to me. There was something that was common about Mount. And then as time went on, this thing that was common, like got stronger and stronger, and I sensed it. And I really didn't even have to see him. I could just feel him. And what I was beginning to realize is that I was being taught how to see and how to sense spirit in everybody. That part of you that I believe, the universe according to Steve, that I believe is always in spirit. And perhaps just part of that comes down to have a human incarnation, and that it comes down in ignorance, so you can make mistakes, and so you could learn from those mistakes. And so when you return back to spirit, you can reflect upon those experiences and actually raise your awareness. This is the process that I felt I was beginning to go under, and learning about spirit was that very first step. Is that I think in retrospect, what was happening is that I think I was sharing all of my experiences with the all that is, what I've later learned that people refer to as the Akashic record. But what I believe is like the consciousness of all that is. that would share our experiences. And then we receive like grace and understanding. And then we use that to raise our awareness. And I believe that this is a process. And I believe this is what I was going through, is that I was beginning to understand, I was beginning to learn and grow about the spirit and how we are all connected. And once I began to feel the spirit in people, then I began to see and feel it in everything, in the trees, the plants, the animals, the universe, everything. And I began to realize this one thing. And now this is me. I'm not preaching to anybody. This is the universe according to Steve. And so anyone else may have a different experience, because that's what's required to reach them. But this is what my experience is. I began to understand that perhaps the creation and the creator are one. That everything we see is stardust. Everything we see is spirit. Whether you believe in the Big Bang or let there be light, it explains the very same thing, that we all come from the very same thing. We are all connected. We all have a unique identity, awareness, but it's all of us together. Together, I believe, universe according to Steve, make up the consciousness of the creator. And so I believe that the creator and the creation are one. And that was one of my first realizations there, is that then I began to see everything in a completely different light. I began to understand why we're here and why our awareness is the key to our learning. Our awareness is the very purpose for us being here. And that was when I had my next experience. It wasn't that I had control over anything that happened, but once I was in a situation, I had control over what I did. It wasn't like I got up, I went to sleep, or I ate, or I went to the bathroom or anything. It was almost like I went from experience to experience, and I couldn't tell what was going on around the experience. It was almost like a stage, like everything was focused on that was going around me. And so that is what I was focused on. And so the next experience was what I later learned was a life review, is that I reviewed my entire life, and not as I was participated in it, not as I was a person standing there. It was as if I was everywhere. It was everywhere in the experience as I reviewed my life, is that I felt everyone's energy, and everyone had a different reason for being in every experience. They had a physical reason and they had a spiritual reason, and every situation was unique to the person that was there. It was like everyone's on a different path. And it's very true that all of a sudden, things that I thought were a certain way, all of a sudden I realized they were completely different. From the battles on the schoolyard to broken relationships to beautiful relationships. All these things are things that I just reviewed over and over again. And then when I got to the end of my life review, my awareness was raised then. And then I went to my life review again, because I could get more and more out of my life review. And so that went over and over again. And I began to do my life review over and over again. Each time I was done with my life review, my awareness would be raised. And I knew when I started my life review that this was going to be a really tough experience. But if I got through it, I would receive such bliss at the end. Because really, that's what drove my desire to do the life review, was the bliss that I received at the end. Because that as I began to work through my life experiences, I began to understand that some of the worst, the worst experience, not that I lived a terrible life, but everybody has terrible experiences in their lives. I realized that the very worst experiences in my life were the ones that brought me the deepest understanding and the most bliss once I got them figured out, going through my life review. So many times people talk about having their near-death experience, and I honor that. Everyone's experience is different. This is my experience. But they talk about seeing beautiful clouds and flowers and beautiful scenes and being at peace. I didn't see any of that, although I felt that bliss. What that bliss was, it was driven through my life review, because as I started to get all of these trials and tribulations from my life, I didn't feel shame anymore. I didn't have regret anymore. I didn't have hatred or animosity or jealousy towards anybody else, even the people who did me harm, because now I understood things. And that was such a liberating feeling. Like I don't know how to explain it, but once all these things are resolved, that was the beauty and the grace that I really felt in that experience. And and that's the way it went for quite some time. My life review was closer to a infinity than it was to one. But like I didn't have a choice on how to go through my life experience or even have my life review. I had free will, but once I stopped learning, then the experience stopped. And then I found I had my next very intense experience. I didn't know it at the time, but I believe I was being tested. I was being tested, perhaps. I don't know. This is once again the universe according to Steve. But I think if I would have passed the test, perhaps I would have stayed in spirit and perhaps have been a perhaps a guide of some type. I would continue my spiritual evolution. But if I failed it, perhaps I would have another human incarnation to continue my spiritual evolution. This is all just conjecture on my part, but this is what I believe what was going on. Because what I did is I found myself in a situation where I was in charge of a group of young adults, kids, and I had to teach them a task. And we were like in a restaurant setting. It sounded like regular world, you know. In fact, up until this point, even though I had all these odd experiences, you know, I don't know why it didn't occur to me like this isn't, you know, you're not in Kansas anymore. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I was just so wrapped up in the experience. I don't know. But I felt that I was in charge of these kids. And no matter what I did, they wouldn't listen to me. You know, I would talk to them and I'd teach them a task, and they would go supposed to do the task, and they would say, yeah, gonna do it. And then they would scatter and nothing would get done. And then I'd get them all together later and they would act like nothing's wrong. I'd be like, what, what happened? And I tried everything I knew. I tried red team, blue team, you know, I tried everything I knew to motivate these kids, but nothing happened. And then there was, everyone had a purpose there. Everyone had a purpose, but there was this one lady who just sat there and prayed. I didn't understand that because I wasn't that kind of a person. You know, I wasn't, you know, prayer wasn't my thing. But you know, I couldn't hear her prayer, although I could hear a word every now and then. But I began to realize the words didn't matter at all. It was like the words were just like a road under which this energy traveled. And I felt this beautiful, loving energy from this lady who I didn't know, or I thought I didn't know, that was just sending this love and energy and awareness to me. And as I began to work through this, I tell you, that really, at times, it really gave me the energy to put one foot in front of the other and really understand it. I really felt this love. And then finally I approached who looked like the person who was running things. And this person had a very, I felt the energy. This person had a very strong energy and an awareness about them. And I knew they were in charge, and I wanted to know what was going on with these kids. Something what was going on. I was feeling anxiety about it. And I just couldn't figure it out. And so I stood before this person. And all of a sudden I realized a few things. Is that I realized, number one, is that I was standing before myself. Not Stevie Weber, but I believe that I was standing before my higher self. And it was then I realized perhaps that part of your spirit always is in spirit, and part of your spirit is incarnated. It's incarnated to have a human experience, to have ignorance, to make mistakes. For when you return to spirit, you experience these life reviews, your awareness grows. And this is a process that I believe perhaps our spirits were always, it was created with the universe, but just as the universe evolves and grows, that our spirits evolve and grow over a period of time and through many incarnations. And so through many different types of incarnations. And that once I began to understand that, I began to look at the kids in a different light, is that I realized these were not kids who I was there to teach them this task. These were spirits who had yet to have a physical human incarnation. And my task was to shepherd them into that human incarnation. And it was a task I was failing at because I had learned all these things about spirit and about how to see things and how to understand things. And the very first opportunity that I got to share it is that all I saw was dopey kids. You know, I didn't rely on all that energy that I learned. I failed. But once I had that understanding, then everything changed. And then I found myself in the very last situation that I had when I was in that place. I was, I come from, oh, you folks would know. Yeah. I come from Kings Park. It's right across the Long Island Sound from you guys in Connecticut. And I would sit on, in Kings Park, small town, working class community, sandwiched between all these very wealthy communities. We have small working class communities, just the way it is. And so at the end of every day, we go down to the bluff. It's this cliffs that overlook the Long Island Sound. We can see Connecticut there, and we hang out. And we talk small town stuff like who's doing who, and like those kind of small town kind of stuff. And some people drink coffee, other people drink out of red Solo cups that aren't coffee and stuff. And we just catch up on small things. And so when I was in that place, is I found myself sitting there with my two friends, Joey and Johnny. And sitting on the bench overlooking Connecticut, and we would watch the sunset together. And this went on like hundreds of times when I was there. And I would sit with Joey and Johnny, and I wouldn't say anything, and I would just watch the sunset with them. And this would go on and on and on, and we just never said anything. And then one day, I realized something. Is that Joey and Johnny, they both died earlier that year. And these were good friends of mine. They were both people who were in their 70s. And John Gallagher, he was like the voice of God in church. When he would do the readings, he would say, "And Jesus," and the floor would shake. You know, he was a character. I really liked him a lot. And he had diabetes, and he had a lot of problems with his infections in his leg. And it eventually took his life, an infection in his leg. And you know what diabetes has. But he was a really good guy. And Joey, he was an Irish guy too. And boy, he spoke with a brogue, and he could tell a tale. Boy, he could tell a tale. And I really enjoyed his company. And he actually broke his back when he was a young kid diving in at the bluff, and they had reconstruction surgery. So he kind of like walked around like Frankenstein all the time. And he actually was hit by a car, I think because he really couldn't see, he really couldn't move around so well. And they were both there. And I thought to myself, wow, I mean, it just echoed in my mind, like, how could this be? They're both dead. Like, really, how could this be? And so it went on time and time again. I would sit there now, and now I wasn't enjoying it. Is that I want to ask them why they were there. And it wasn't that I talked, it was just like an awareness thing. But for some reason I didn't want to ask them. But as time went on, is that because I felt like if I asked them, all of a sudden this world I had created would come crashing down. Like all of a sudden, like this was a missing peg. Like, how could this be? And then one day, there weren't really days there unless it was part of the scene. You know, it's more like, it was like time wouldn't move unless if you weren't doing anything or learning things. You could sense time because you could sense your growth, and that gave you the sense of time. So when I say day, it's just because that's what the scene was. But day after day, sunset after sunset, it was just building intensity until one day I felt like if I didn't ask him at this very moment, I would never have this chance again. And so I asked him, "What are you doing here?" And in my awareness, and they said to me, "They're here to make sure that I'm okay." And I really didn't understand that. I'm okay. What do they mean by that? I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. What do they mean by that? And then I was watching the sunset, and the sun was just getting brighter and brighter. And I just kind of closed my eyes. And then when I opened them, when I thought it was okay, I opened my eyes and I was in my hospital room. And my mother was holding my hand, and she was telling me that I was in a terrible accident, but I was gonna be okay. And I believed her. My mother wouldn't lie to me. I mean, really, but wow, I didn't know what was happening. I had all these tubes in me, and I was intubated, and I couldn't talk, and I was tied down. That was very strange. It was the first time I was tied down with my clothes on before. And so it took me a little, trying to get out, but no. But but so so but then I remembered the lady who was praying. I knew who that was now because I could sense spirit. I did. It's my friend, a dear friend of mine. Her name is Kathy Plant. And she's actually the person who eventually wrote the book with me. And we were friends for like 20 years because we were both in the local community. I was president of the school board. You know, I did the thing with the kids. So I knew a lot of the moms, and she was just a really good friend of mine. And we would go hiking together and with our dogs, and we'd walk our dogs. That's kind of like how we met. We were just very good friends. But all of a sudden, like, a lot of things changed because like I saw everybody in a different light. Like some people who I thought were my friends and were my friends, but I realized they really weren't. No, I didn't see them in the way that they really were. I don't mean bad or good. It's just like it was very different. The person I saw now was very different than my conception of them, and in both a positive and a negative way, different people. And Kathy was one of those people that I really didn't understand things. But then I thought to myself, wow, did she pray? Like, how did she talk to me? Like, and did she know she was talking to me? Like that was, so I just had to know. As soon as I got the intubation out and I got untied, I got my phone, I texted my friend, and I said, I figured I'd give a shot at it. So I sent her a text. I said, thank you for visiting me when I was out, if you know what I mean. You know, I figured, what the fuck? You know, see what she said. And she responded right away. She says, you know? And I said, yes. I said, I've been to another place that I understand and I see things in a certain light, and I heard you. And she said, and she texted back. She says, I prayed for you every day at a certain time. And she went through these things. And that was the energy that I felt. I mean, really, I felt that because she was praying, and I'm not a praying person. But it was the energy and everything else, and I felt that energy. And so that was one of my first realizations. Another realization that I had was that I had this drive to get better. I really did. Even in rehab, is that the nurses would chase me down the hallway, tell me I'm going to get them in trouble, I'm going to fall, they're going to do an accident report and everything else. But I just wanted to get better. I really did. Is that I knew like there was a certainty of outcome. There really was, because I knew if I did these things, I would get better, 100%. Even though I couldn't walk, but I knew I was going to get better. And then I began to realize, Joey and Johnny, what they meant to make sure that I'm going to be okay. they didn't mean there. They meant here, that they were going to be my spirit guides, not my spirit shields to prevent me from anguish, but to how to deal with it, because it just seems so odd. Joey had a broken back, and these implants, I had a broken back. John lost his leg and lost his life to an infection in his leg. My leg was all crushed and crumbled. You know, why else would these people be why else? Like, how does this fits? It fits so well. Like, how could this not be planned? I don't think it was planned, but gosh, but I just felt, I really did, is I felt like I would go through this and I would get better at it, and I would get better at it. And it really did, as I strove so hard. And Kathy was a good friend to me at that time, because, and she still is, I adore her, and she is a dear friend. But she was like halfway between Mother Teresa and Sergeant Slaughter. You know, she was halfway, you know, go, and the other half, it's all right. You know, she was very kind but very pushing. But I always felt Joey and Johnny's presence there. They never said one more push-ups. I never felt that, but I felt that energy, that same grace that I felt when I stood before my higher self. That was the energy that I was feeling from them. And so life was starting to get better. You know, it was. I wasn't, you know, I'd left my companies, and I had started to work for another company. I'd gone back to work for a little bit of time, waiting for the kids to graduate before I went to my next phase of my life. And so, but it was a long recovery. But Kathy was a big part of it, because we would go hiking together like we would in the past. But now it was part of my rehabilitation. And so I really got better. And then one evening, went downstairs in my basement, do the laundry or something, and I found my 20-year-old son dead from a drug overdose. And what do you say? You know, it happened so quickly. You know, he was. I put so much effort into my kids. You know, every coach, he was a Regent scholar. He could play 3 instruments. Like I always felt like the AAA, arts, academics, and athletic. You had to be good one thing in each of those things. But he was great. He was great, and the wrestler, New York State champion. He was on a scholarship to Lehigh University, a big engineering school, and he played the piano like Mozart, and like the saxophone like Dizzy Gillespie played the horn. He played the guitar like Jimi Hendrix. He was just tremendous, and just, I don't know what happened. It just happened so quickly. And I don't know, it's like, you know, all personality wasn't so funny now. You know, I put a lot of effort into my kids, but like in some ways I was a wonderful example, but in other ways I was like a big kid. You know, I'm president of the school board, but I'm a big kid. You know, I was full of contrast. And now I thought to myself, well, are those contrasts really necessary? I mean, do they really feed the kids as a parent? You know, I don't know. All these thoughts started going through my head. And that was when I started to think about things a little bit more, about my experience in the place between here and there. Because up until that point is that I made fun of it, is that I would often say it to like friends, and I would laugh about it. I'd say, "Oh yeah, universe according to Steve," ha ha ha, ha, and everyone laughed, especially at the local pub. We have a pub in town that everyone goes to, and so we had a lot of laughs over that. But when I would tell Kathy that, she wouldn't laugh. I mean, at first she would just let it go by, but excuse me. So at she would let it go by, and then one day she said to me, "Steve, you're full of crap." She says, "You have to think about that, and perhaps it wasn't the drugs they gave you in the hospital. Perhaps it wasn't the knock on your noggin, as you say. perhaps you did have an experience, and that now's the time to begin to reflect upon that experience. And then she said something to me. She said, did my son ever try to contact me? And she had me up until that point. Yeah, you know, I thought, but then all of a sudden I got upset. I really, I didn't show it to her, but I was like, I'm wrestling with this grief, and she's talking about my son contacting me and all this other stuff, and like her hocus pocus mumbo jumbo that she's always pushing in my face. Like, I had enough of it. And I just like, I didn't say anything because I was beginning really to adore her at this point. Like, we had been friends for a long time, but now I don't know, I've seen her in a different light. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, whatever. And so, well, what happened is my cousin went to a psychic, and she, no, a medium, excuse me. Now I know the difference, a medium. And she went to a medium to contact her grandmother, but instead my son came through, and the medium said, is it okay? And she said, of course. And the medium said a few things. She said that my son, the numbers 23 and 56 come to mind, and that just so happens to be her son, my cousin's son, and my son's numbers on the football team. One was Michael Jordan's number, the other one's Lawrence Taylor, and I thought that was interesting, but I really didn't think anything of it when Kathy told me, because that, you know, you could look up things, you know, on Facebook, and like, you know, they see a picture and stuff. And Kathy objected. She said that no, they didn't even know anything about. Like, all right, well, they figured it out. And then the other thing she said is that Nick, my son, has a synchrony with Saint Teresa. She's the little flower. At least that's the way it's referred to in the Catholic Church. And she asked us if we've been seeing red roses anywhere. And this just played into Kathy's hand, because like we were seeing red roses everywhere. And it was so odd. We had made a note of it, you know, because like we'd be hiking on the trail, we'd see red roses. And when we would see them on, you know, someone's taking pictures, you know, it's around, you know, Valentine's Day and stuff. And she was like, no, someone's trying to send us a message. So when Kathy heard this, she was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, we have been seeing flowers. And so that was like the end of it. And then so one day Kathy comes to me and she gets a little Saint Teresa statue. And on one of our hikes, there's this little trail. It has a little babbling brook, like something out of Saint Central Casting. And we put this little statue there, and she brought a pen, and we like a magic, you know, a Sharpie, and we wrote on the rock like a little prayer and asking for guidance. And we put things, and Kathy had lost her mom, and she put a few, and we wrote a few little prayers and rocks and requests for prayers there, and we left it there. And I thought it was nice that Kathy was, I knew what she was doing with the Saint Teresa statue, but I kind of, you know, it was very nice that she was doing that. And so that was it. And then about 2 weeks later, we came back to that spot, and damn, there were like 100 rocks there. And oh, there were like 100 rocks there with everybody who wrote little prayers on their things, and like put it to saint, and people put like crosses and little Buddhas and other things all there. You know, is all of a sudden like, and part of you may react like, okay, yeah, everyone has problems. All right, thanks. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it that we're all in this together. Just like that energy I felt in that other place, like we're all connected, that we all have our own identity, but there's a commonness that binds us together. And I started to realize that we're in all this together, that we all have these challenges that we're going to face in life, and we better, you know, we'd be a lot better off if we stuck together. It kind of like reminded me of that Sting song, A Message in the Bottle, where he says he puts a message in the bottle hoping someone will save him. Instead of getting an answer, he gets, you know, 100,000 bottles back with messages asking for help. You know, it's very similar to that. But to me, it was very healing in a sense. It really was. It was very healing because I started to begin to come to terms with things at that time. And then something very odd happened, is that about a year after my son's passing, a friend gave us a Saint Teresa's mass card. And I look at the mass card and I look at the day that she was canonized, and that was January 2nd. That was my son's birthday. And oh, of course, Kathy loved this because it's like the connection again. And she said, I got you now. But the day she was canonized was the same day my son died. Like, I'm a computer guy. Like I could buy the one date, I could dismiss that, but the 2 dates, I mean, they're coincidences. I mean, I'm starting to doubt that, but gosh, and that just echoed in my mind. And then that night I had the darndest dream, is that I had this dream that my son was with me, and like everything was okay. Like none of this wasn't happened. Like it was a dream, like a bad dream. Like everything is okay. Like wow, like Dorothy coming out of the Wizard of Oz. Like wow. And then I woke up and I realized that no, it wasn't a dream. But all of a sudden I felt lifted. I felt relieved of this burden, very similar to like when I did my life review and the place between here and there. And I began to understand why. I began to understand, I began to understand certain things about why we were here, and that my son was having that very same experience that I was, that he was beginning to atone to his life. He had a very short life, but wow, he had some poignant moments. I mean, really, just poignant moments. Tens of thousands of people cheering for him. He really had a lot of things to draw upon. But he was experiencing those same things that I was experiencing. And I remember how bliss that was. And I remember there was a door that my higher self would come out of. And I knew like I couldn't go in that door, whatever. But I kind of felt like perhaps when I had that dream that he was going to that door, that he was going to the next place, and it was saying goodbye to me. And that was what I really felt. And I began to understand the place between here and there and the lessons I learned about us all being connected, and how that helps me to understand, because it took me a long time to figure out that it's okay to be happy again. It really did. But as I began to work through all these things and have my constant life reviews with my son, just in the here and now, having the life reviews. In fact, if I can't look back 6 months ago and think what a potato head I was, it means I'm not growing. But really, that life review was so important to me in the here and now. And then something very interesting happened. I had video cameras on my house, and my neighbor had video cameras on his house. And the person who sold my son the drugs actually delivered the drugs to the house. And the police had the texts and they had the video camera of the guy actually delivering it. And because my son was an athlete, he didn't have any other drugs in his system. He was just being a dopey kid, doing dopey, risky, stupid stuff. And they caught the guy and they put him on trial, and they charged him with second-degree murder, the very same charge that they charged the fella in the beginning who killed that young girl. And they were able to do that because my son didn't have any other drugs in his system, and that it was the story, the narrative, and everything about it. And so they put the guy on trial. And so I have to let there be light. Hold on. Alexa, turn on Steve's office. And so I wanted to hate this guy. No, I mean, I had a big ball of hate really stirred up in my gut. Everything I'd worked towards, I can't tell you, I just, I had a big ball of hate, like really, really in my heart. And so I went to that trial and I saw that young man. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I couldn't get that hate up. I just, I felt nothing but sorry for that kid because he looked to me, he was a kid. He was a stupid, drug addicted kid who made a series of terrible mistakes that he couldn't take back. And how am I supposed to hate this kid? Like, all I really wanted to do is I wanted his life to be, I didn't want him to do this stuff anymore. I just wanted his life to get better. It seemed like such a waste. And they convicted that guy. And they sentenced him to 16 years. The very same. How does this happen? And why did I feel that way? Because that's a tough thing as a parent to feel. And I think I know. Like, I had this experience in the beginning with this terrible accident. This little girl dies. I had this experience of the near-death experience. I had this experience of losing my son. And then I had this experience of this trial afterwards. Like, first off, how are these things not connected? I mean, I don't know. I just felt like life was like a stage that was set and you play it out. But also is that I think perhaps is that I don't recall, but I bet you seeing those parents and what they experienced, I bet you that was part of my life review. When I was going through my life review, when I was going through my life review over and over again, that I think that was part of it. So when I was put in the very same situation myself, not because I'm so virtuous, not because I'm such a wonderful person, but because that I came to terms with it in that other place. And so when I was confronted with it myself in the here and now, that I was able to deal with it in a real way, in a constructive way. And that's my story, I guess. I come to terms with a lot of things. I live in this beautiful place in Florida. My dear friend Kathy, she lives in New York. We stay in contact, and I just really enjoy life. But it's been causing me to reevaluate everything in my life and like all my experiences. And but I'd like to just end with this short story because I could go on forever, and you've been very kind and very patient listening to me ramble on. But let me just share each of this one very important part is that Kathy said that, did my son ever try to contact me? And I said no, because and I didn't try because she was frustrated because I didn't try to go to mediums, and I haven't, because I felt like I didn't need anyone standing between me and my son. I don't need anyone to channel. If he was to contact me, he would contact me in a way that I would understand, not through somebody else. And I honor everybody's different. This is my experience, but this is me. This is my experience. So I have to deal with it the way that I make sense. And so when Kathy and I were writing this book, we would go for the walk along Long Island Sound, right on the seashore there. We'd see Connecticut, and we'd go searching for beach glass. And it was kind of a way of just relaxing. That was one of Kathy's favorite pastimes. That's the glass that rolls up on the beach from all the rocks. You guys know about the rocks on the shore, and it gets the best beach glass. And but at that time she was praying to Saint Jude, the violet flame. And so when we'd walk along the beach, she would pray to Saint Jude, and she would ask for healing. This was during that crazy health crisis we went through. And she would pray to Saint Jude for healing, to bring healing to the universe. And so I would often tease her and say, if it wasn't for that, things would have been a lot worse. So we all should be grateful. And but I honored her as well. You know, I have a certain sarcasm about me, as I think you've begun to understand. But also I have a great deal of reverence and understanding. And so I understood one thing, and that was that Kathy wanted an affirmation that Saint the Violet Flame had heard her. So she wanted to find some violet beach glass. And if you've searched for beach glass along Connecticut or Long Island shore, you will find violet beach glass never, 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 never. If you do, you will find hen's teeth next. I guarantee you. and I knew, excuse me, I knew she was going to be upset. And so we're walking back to the car after about an hour or so. I knew she was going to be upset. So I was trying to think of some spiritual way to make her feel better. And so just as we're getting close to the car, this Dalmatian puppy, this little Dalmatian puppy, maybe 60 pounds, still maybe 6 months old, comes running over the sand dunes and starts jumping all over us. And I was freaking out. I love dog. He's like, this is the best. And I was patting him and throwing him around and really having a good time. And the ladies, I think she was peeing behind the sand dune or something, because it took her a little while to come running out, and she was fixing herself. It's like, I'm sorry. And she comes out, and I was like, no, I love the dog. And so I'm petting him, we're chatting. And so I asked, what's the dog's name? Violet. And so I'm looking at this dog, like I'm thinking to myself, this is a Dalmatian puppy. How do you get Violet out of this? But you know, I just, all right, fine. I all right, whatever. And so so I'm talking, I'm walking away, and then Kathy starts pouting about her Violet beach class. And I look at her and I say, Kathy, the dog's name is Violet. And she's like, what? Like, the dog's name is Violet. And I said, that means something. We have to find that out. Because as time went on, I began to realize something about seeing signs, is that if you go, wow, and you say, oh, wow, that's from Aunt so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. To me, that like chases it away. It breaks the communication, because you're not seeing the communication. Is that you got to really find out, what's the meaning? Why are you seeing this? Forget about the wow. Just, why are you seeing this? Why are they communicating? Just to let you know everything's okay? Okay, maybe, but sometimes it's more than that. And so I said to Kathy, I said, no. I said, we have to find this lady again. Is that we are going to find her again. I know. And so just so happens, a couple of weeks later, walking on the beach, people walk on the same beach. She's there with the dog. We go running over to her. We start, talking on and everything, telling about the dog. And so we ask her, how come the dog's name is Violet? And she says that her and her son, their favorite show was Gone with the Wind. They used to watch it together. And one of Mom's favorite scenes was when Scarlett O'Hara would put on this big violet dress for Brett Butler. I forget the scene. And she said she always loved the scene, and her son made a big fuss over it when it came on, because she knew how much she loved it. And so when the dog, when she got the dog, she decided to name the dog Violet and spell it like Scarlett spells her name, not like the color. And her son died just a few months earlier, about the same time I lost my son. And we became very good friends. And her picture's in the book along with Violet's picture. But we became very good friends, and we really, we really helped each other. I thought I didn't need any help, but we became very good friends, and we really shared a lot during a very crazy time. And so I think to myself, I mean, sure, Saint Germain could have brought us together. Okay, I'll give that to Kathy. But also, I think our sons brought us together, both of our sons, for the very for the very purpose that we had. And see, that's the way I think spirit communicates, is that it's not there to save you from trauma. It's there to help you navigate, to learn the lessons that you have to learn. So I'm all done. Thank you very much for listening to my story. It's been an honor to be here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Any questions, fair game. You can tell me I'm full of shit, everything. I don't care. I'm here. I'm just chilling. So thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. You did a great job. It did come from the heart. We felt it. Thank you for that. I'm going to contact you tomorrow because I want to share some private things with you, if you don't mind. Okay. All right. So any questions? Comments? Anything?
Sometimes people have to take it in for a while.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Bethany.
Wow. My comment, just what an incredibly compelling story. Steve, I really appreciate it so much. And there's just so much there. It's just incredible. I wonder, the name of your book is Between Here and There.
The place between here and there. The place between here and there.
Between here and there. And it's available on Amazon?
Yes, on Amazon, as well as on the Audible, and it's in Spanish and English, and and Kindle.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to read it. Thank you.
I also want to mention is that I live now. Oh, does Glenn have a question? I think Glenn has his hand up.
Yes. Glenn?
Hey, Glenn. I think you're muted.
I yield the floor. Go ahead. You're telling a great story.
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess he might have hit that by accident. So one thing is right now I live in Florida. I live just right outside Orlando in this retirement community. I told in a pre-meeting that I'm not telling you where I live, not because I want to be anonymous, just because I don't want you to come. There was already too many people here. This is paradise, and it is great because for the most part it's been a retirement community, but now it's changing because that so many people still work and they work remotely. And so now, like, it's a lot younger. So that's kind of like how I showed up here, and I just love it. And so they have these venues here, and I live about 5 houses from a venue, and I have this big, huge gong. It's 50 inches. It's 5 feet wide, and I have it on wheels. And I roll it out my front door. And once a week, I lead a gathering, which I call Mantras, Meditations, and Good Vibrations. And I do the gathering with a dear friend of mine, Lou. I call her Guru Lou, and she plays the bowls, and we do some chanting, very similar to like from the Japji Sahib, very Kundalini kind of chanting. And then we do a sound bath, and it's just amazing because that, first off, I was always attracted to the sound because it gave me that feeling when I was in that place between here and there, because my mind was clear, and my mind's always going a million miles an hour. And when I hear the gong or the sound bath, it kind of like pushes all that chatter out, and I could really clear my mind. But I was so surprised to see, I've been doing it a year now, and 100 people show up each time, and it's getting bigger. And they're telling me I have to get to a different venue because they give it to me for free because it's part of the homeowners association. But I'm just amazed, and I share parts from my experience in the place between here and there. I don't really talk about it in detail, but a lot of what I share, and it's a spiritual event, so a lot of it is the spiritual. I call it a philosophy, a way of looking at life, and many paths, one destination. So that's really exciting thing that I do, and I just wanted to share it. In addition to, I love riding. I have electric bicycles. I have like 3 or 4 electric bicycles, and there's construction all around. And so I act absolutely irresponsibly on that, jumping over anything that is possible to jump over. I crack up every day. My mother gets so angry at me because she sees the cuts, and I have to fit to her until I slipped out of the shower. She rolls her eyes, but it's the game that we play. So just want to share that.
Thank you. Okay. Dana, you're on.
Just real quick, I have a great number of questions, and it has to do with you communicating with your higher power. Can I just email you the questions later?
Sure, absolutely.
I emailed you before the meeting, so I know that email works. So thanks.
Oh, great. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the group. I recently spoke before the IANDS group, and that was my first time speaking before at the convention. And, you know, I never talked to anybody about these things, you know, about their experiences. And I thought, like, I don't know, it's like, it's sometimes it feels like an uncomfortable suit because I'm an outlaw biker. I used to, you know, if the person 10 years ago met me today, he'd beat the crap out of them. You know, it sometimes it feels odd, but I tell you, I really enjoyed being around everyone at IANDS because all of a sudden I started to see other people who had similar experiences, and I saw how they adapted to the life. And you know, I began to listen to some of their stories, but it really was the most interest to me because everyone's story is very unique. There were common things amongst them, but I was really most interested in how they dealt with it, because one of the greatest challenges for me was that a lot of times I find myself around very knowledgeable people who study this stuff, who have a lot of, I mean, I have a master's degree, but I mean, they have a lot more letters after their names than I do. And so I feel like I took a shortcut. Like, I feel like so connected to spirit and everything else, but I feel like I didn't earn it. I felt like all I did was survive, you know, but it was good because I talked to a lot of people about that. Like, who's my friend? Peter, I know his
Panagor.
yeah, Peter. Yes, yeah, that's him. And I know him as Peter Love because that's his, like, his domain name. And I got a great story about him. I was like, you know, because I was adjusting to it. Like, I felt like sometimes people would come up to me and, like, I really don't know anything besides what I've shared in my experience. I really don't have any wisdom beyond that. And so at times I feel very awkward, and I'd feel a very great sense of responsibility. And sometimes, like, I'd see people's eyes, like when I go to sleep, like they're longing up, you know, sometimes it was very difficult to adjust to. So I would talk to Peter, and he would help me out. He didn't know me from a hole in the wall. I sent him an email, a private message one day, and I began this like 6-month-long conversation where he, you know, he really helped me. And so I told him, I said, yeah, I never saw him or anything. And, you know, I just his picture on Facebook. And so I told him, one day, if some crazy guy comes up to you and gives you a big hug, you'll know it's me. And so so I go to IANDS, and right before the festivities start, the day before, I see Peter is giving like some sort of meditation thing, you know, that's like speaking my language, but meditation thing before the thing. And so I said I was going to go to that. And so I go to that. I see Peter. He doesn't recognize me. He makes his presentation and all, and that was it. And then I wait for the very last question, and so I raise my hand, and he calls on me, and I said that as I said, because he actually talked about shortcuts, and I told him, I said I felt that way, and I said I was really struggling with it, but I talked to this one person who was very knowledgeable on it, and they talked to me over a series of 6 months and really helped me, and really helped me come to terms with things and enable me to speak before groups. And I said, "Do you know who that person is?" And he looked at me, looked kind of scared. You know, I said, "No." And so I said, "May I approach you?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I came up to him, and I gave him a big hug, and then he leaned back, put up both arms, and said, "Steve." And that's my Peter story.
Okay, questions still open?
Any more? Good. I could still. Oh, good.
Okay, Glenn.
Hi. Yeah, Steve. No, thanks for a compelling story. So much stuff packed in such a short period of time. You did a great job, I thought. So thank you. Other than that, I just with a small amount of time, one thing that kind of caught my eye was you talked about going through your life review like over and over and over again. Did you get any? I think your explanation was that you had to keep doing it until you got the understanding you needed out of it or something like that, right?
Well, that's the way it's simple. Like me, I didn't know that at the time. It's just like, is every time I learned more and more, I received the bliss at the end, and I went through it. My awareness was raised. I was able to see more, and that went on and on. But over time, I learned less and less. And then when I didn't learn anymore, when it just wasn't, then I would start to have my next experience. It's not like anybody had control over it, or I felt I had control over it. It was like the process drove the process, you know, the understanding.
Understand. I think a little bit anyway. The bliss catches my eye. And have you experienced that since you've been back doing practices, or?
Yeah, because that, you know, one thing that took me a little while to understand is that it's kind of like foolish of me to like really come to this realization, but sometimes it's really difficult for people to do a life review because they really have to face things. Even when I face things about my son's death and about, you know, me being a parent and things I could have done differently, like I go over those things. People say, oh no, you shouldn't say that about you, you're blaming yourself. No, I'm not blaming myself. Is that I'm really going to understand things, and I'm going to see through it. And once I go through these things, I understand them. All of a sudden, it's like I don't feel anxiety about it anymore. All of a sudden, I feel better. You know, I don't know how to explain it, but I find that if I'm honest and I really do some soul searching, sometimes I put a lot of shit around very simple things and blow things out of proportion. But really, it is such a blissful thing to resolve things that were tormenting you, if that makes any sense. I mean, that's like the Reader's Digest version.
No, that's beautiful, man. Yeah, Yogananda. I'm not sure if you know that name.
Yeah, I know Yogananda. Yeah, sure.
I think he said that divine bliss was the highest form of awareness.
No, that's so true.
Isn't
And
it?
love. I mean, love is part of that, because I think the warm and fuzzies are beautiful. I love the warm and fuzzies. I love, especially the affections of a kind lady. You know, I love. But the warm and fuzzies is just the gateway to a much broader understanding. And so bliss is part along that road. But I truly believe that love is the ultimate knowledge. It's the ultimate understanding. Love is extremely wise, extremely knowing. It's open. It learns because of the way that it looks at things is, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Anybody, I explain it forever, but it's all right. And when you say bliss, that's really, it all comes from that life review and surrendering to it. You know, so many times when you surrender, you empower yourself. You give yourself such power and strength because you're giving up all preconceived notions. You open up your mind and your energy, and you achieve even greater things. So through this surrendering process, you really, and that's what the life review is. You have to surrender to that process.
Fantastic. Beautiful, man. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Well stated. Thank you. Any other? I think we have a few more minutes before we. I mean, we can always continue to communicate and share with each other, because Bethany is going to stop the recording, right? I just want to say that our next speaker, and for May, is our own Connecticut gentleman that had his near-death experience. He was in a coma. This was just last year in September, so it's pretty fresh for him.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to run because I can actually catch happy hour. The bars close at 9 o'clock here, so I can catch it quick.
Okay.